So it's Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines from the bottom on Kuf Beis. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Leisechal HaNefesh HaBasar. Don't eat the soul with the flesh. It's discussing over there the prohibition of eating blood. But in this repetitive pasuk, it says, Leisechal HaNefesh HaBasar, don't eat the soul with the flesh. This is referring to as a Eiver Min HaChai. Rashi explains that because if an entire limb is cut off, it won't regenerate. So that's just like the soul. If the soul is removed, it doesn't come back to life. So the Eiver Min HaChai is like a full soul that gets removed. That's finished. That's not allowed to be eaten. Then the pasuk, there's another pasuk. Basar basada treifa leisechelo. Flesh in the field, torn, you shall not eat. This is basar min hachai. This is flesh that's torn off a living animal. Basar min treifa. And it's also regular flesh from a treifa animal, not while it's alive. Just we always understood the pasuk to be referring to is not to eat a treifa, an animal that died, that would have died, that has some sort of defect. What Rabbi Yochanan does is he divides up Eiver Min HaChai and Basar Min HaChai into two psukim. He combines Basar Min HaChai with treifa meat. That's it from the same pasuk. And the way he's looking at it is that only Eiver Min HaChai will not regenerate. But Basar Min HaChai would regenerate. If you cut a piece of flesh off the animal, the flesh could possibly grow back. It won't grow back a whole bone and sinews and all of that, but the flesh could possibly regenerate. Reb Shimon ben Lakish on the other hand, Reb Shimon ben Lakish Amar, he says, Leisechel HaNefesh HaBasar, don't eat the soul with the flesh. Say Eiver Min HaChai or Basar Min HaChai. He holds that it's referring to both, because he says that the soul the fact is the flesh is alive, and the soul is there. So don't eat it while it's alive. He's not referring to regenerating. He just says that the soul is there. Ubasar basada treifa leisechelu. What about that pasuk? It's a basar min treifa. That's what we always thought it was referring to, a regular treifa animal. Okay. Now we're going to go through some differences according to Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Eiver Min HaChai and Basar Min HaChai. Let's say someone eats both, Eiver Min HaChai and Basar Min HaChai. That means he cut an entire limb off, and he also cut off another piece of flesh. It wasn't enough. So the Rabbi Yochanan chayiv time. According to Rabbi Yochanan, he chayiv two malchus. Why? Because it comes from two different psukim, Eiver Min HaChai and Basar Min HaChai. The Reb Shimon ben Lakish ain't chayiv al achas. According to Rish Lakish, he only chayiv one, because it's all one pasuk. Achal basar min hachai, basar min treifa. Let's say he eats flesh from a living animal, and he eats flesh from a treifa animal. That's an animal that was shechted but had a problem in the lungs or something. The Reb Shimon ben Lakish chayiv shtayim. According to Rish Lakish, he chayiv two. Why? Because basar the treifa is the pasuk for the treifa. Leisechel HaNefesh HaBasar is the pasuk for Basar Min HaChai. Chayiv too, but Rabbi Yochanan el chayiv al achas. Rabbi Yochanan learns them both from one pasuk. Achal Eiver Min HaChai u'Basar Min HaTreifa l'divrei HaKol chayiv shtayim. This is the extreme. You see, we have two psukim and we have three things. So the middle one, the Basar Min HaChai, Rabbi Yochanan throws it over to treifa, and Rish Lakish puts it by the Eiver Min HaChai. So, but if you have Eiver Min HaChai and treifa meat, everyone holds Yechayiv twice. That for sure comes from two different psukim. Now the Gemara asks for a minute. There's a contradiction here, because Achal Eiver Min HaChai Min HaTreifa. If someone eats Eiver Min HaChai from an animal that's a treifa, how does he do this? It must be a treifa that's recognizable from the outside, like the because we're not shechting it. Basar min hatreifa could be you shechted it and you checked the lungs. It wasn't kosher. That's what we were talking about. Here, you're taking a limb off an animal that if you would have shechted it, it would have been a treifa anyway. And you're eating it while it's alive. So you're doing two prohibitions here. And according to all opinions, that's two different psukim. Rabbi Yechanan amar chayiv shtayim. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish amar ein chayiv alachas. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says you only chayiv one. So Bishlam with Rabbi Yechanan Nicha, we understand Rabbi Yechanan. You chayiv two, it's two different psukim. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish kasha. It's a kasha to Rish Lakish. Amar Rabbi Yosef like kasha. Rabbi Yosef says it's not a kasha. Kan behema achas, kan b'shtei behemas. Depends if it's one animal or two animals. The way we posed the question was that it was Aver min achai from the same animal. So, b'shtei behemas mechayiv shtayim, everyone would agree that the two separate animals. One is Aver min achai, you cut a limb off, and the other animal was a treifa. So everyone would agree a chayiv too. That's what we learned before from Rabbi Yechanan Rish Lakish. However, with one animal, there's a machlekes if you can get Aver min achai and treifa to come together. What is the machlekes? Amar Abaya says we're trying to set up that when this animal was born, it was already a treifa. Right when it came out of the womb, was already a treifa. So in other words, while it was in the womb, it doesn't matter if it's a treifa or not, because you shech the mother, you'll be able to eat it. You don't have any issues with that. But right when it's born, we see already it's missing the leg or something that would have made it a treif.
That alone would make it a treif? If it can live?
No, well, if let's say it was nechtach, it's cut off from, I guess missing wouldn't make it, it would, only if it was cut above the knee. Okay. So Mar Savar, one of them holds Behema Bechayele Varamei Medes V'Isr Treifa V'Isr Ever Bahadi Adadikase. This is Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan holds, like we said before, we had a Machlekes Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. If Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon said that an animal, while it's alive, we don't view it as a whole organism. We view it as a bunch of limbs, and the point of that is that it's the question is, when does the prohibition of Aver min achai come onto an animal? So, if you view the animal as an organism, so there's no Aver min achai here. It's a whole organism. So the prohibition would only come after you cut a piece off. Or do you view the whole animal as a bunch of Aver min achais? While it's alive, it's a walking around Aver min achai. You happen not to cut it off yet, but the prohibition is still on it that you're not allowed to eat any part of this animal until it's shechted. So the question is, do we have the prohibition of Aver min achai on a regular animal that's walking around? So Rabbi Yechanan says yes. So therefore, when did this animal become a treifa? Right when it was born. When is Aver min achai? Right when it was born. So they come simultaneously. So therefore you have two prohibitions. The other one says that no, there's no Aver min achai until you cut a piece off. So the animal's born, it's running around, let's say it's a treifa, so it can't live more than a year, and then sometime later you cut a piece off. We won't have the prohibition of Aver min achai imposed on top of the what's already there, that it was a treifa. So that's why Rish Lakish says that you only have one malchus, because it's the same animal. As granted, they come from two different psukim, but if it's the same animal and this was already prohibited because of a treifa, I can't have the Aver min achai imposed on top.
No double jeopardy here, huh?
So the basis of the machlekes here is how to view an animal while it's alive. Does it have on it the prohibition already of Eiver min Achai? There's a book, so Halivni, David Halivni, you know that is, Weiss. He's a professor at Columbia, or the Jewish Theological Seminary. So he wrote a book called Pshat and Drash. And he's trying to figure out, what he's discussing is, sometimes the drashos and the Gemara are not so, they're not literal. You read them, it's like, that's not what it says. When the Gemara takes a pasuk, and it reads into it a halacha that's not the literal reading. So he's saying well, how could you just do that? That's not what it says. So he's explaining that the way we read, we always give preference to what's literal, and what's an allegorical or what's alluding to, that's secondary. He says in the Gemara's times they didn't do that. It had the same. What you could read into it and what was literal had the same validity, and we don't think like that, but that's how the Gemara was saying, and that's his explanation. But for an example, for what he wants to give, so he mentions that in the early Greek books, Lahavdil, in Homer, so the way he describes the battles in the Iliad or whatever, he says that body parts, he looks at them as separate organisms. That's how the scholars look, the way they're described, that each limb is something separate. So anyway, lahavdil. Here we're talking about that you have an animal that has separate Eiver min Achais all over it, even though it's still intact.
It's very interesting.
Anyway, okay.
Different way of thinking.
Right.
People used to think differently.
Right. We assume that the perspectives are the same, and it's really not. They looked at it the totally different frame of reference. Another possibility to explain the machlekes. The kuli alma, everyone holds behima b'chayel lav levar memedes. An animal is a full organism. There's no Eiver min Achai on this animal until there's Eiver min Achai. Ubamaisi yisr Eiver mechal yisr treifa kamiflagi. The question is, can Eiver min Achai, now after something is cut off, fall onto this animal, be superimposed onto this animal after it's already treif? Marsa varos yisr Eiver chayil yisr treifa. Rabbi Yochanan holds, it's not a problem. Eiver min Achai is more significant than the treifa, so therefore it could be imposed on top. Why? Because Isur l'bnei Noach. Eiver min Achai is applicable even to non-Jews. Treifa is not. So therefore we can put Eiver min Achai on top of the rules of treifa. The other one holds, Rish Lakish holds, that Eiver min Achai, after there's a piece cut off, does not come on top of an Isur treifa. Good morning. Follow? It doesn't. Rish Lakish holds that you can't put it on top because he doesn't hold of that Yisur l'ben Noach is enough to make it more significant, and that it should be able to be imposed over the treifa. So you only get malchus once, if it's the same animal. Iba Yisema, another way of learning this. The kuli alma behema b'chayel eivar memedes. Everyone holds that the animal is already cut up, as if it's already cut. It's a bunch of different eivarim. It's walking around with the prohibition of Eiver min Achai on every single limb. However, it became a treifa a little bit later. It wasn't born a treifa. Now we have the machlekes the opposite. But Maisi isi treifa chayil iser Eiver kamiflagi. And now there's a machlekes. Can a treifa be imposed over Eiver min Achai? Marsav rasi v'chayil, marsav le'yasi v'chayil. One of them says that it does go on top of it, and the other one says that it doesn't. I don't have a clue why. How could treifa be unless I say that they don't hold of ein iser chalal iser? That's the only thing I can think of. Because what is a treifa moisif or is a treifa koilel? It doesn't have any of the Aver Menachai applies to a Ben Noach. A treifa. Look.
By the way, are we considered Benayach?
Oh, maybe I have a. Well, back then, possibly.
Bring back then when?
Before the Torah was given, we may have been considered Bnei Noach.
Okay.
So, maybe what he's saying here is everyone holds Bein B'chei Levarim Imedes. No. So the whole animal is a whole bunch of Aver Menachais. Then the animal becomes a treifa. Then I eat a piece of this animal while it's alive. So now it's a treifa and Aver Menachai. So one opinion must hold, that Rabbi Yochanan must hold that we say Isser Chalal Isser. Even though we never said an opinion like that before. Rashi writes it like that. Rabbi Yochanan Tzavar Isser Chalal Isser. That's what he holds, Isser Chalal Isser. We've been trying to avoid that opinion the whole time. We're coming up with ways, no, it's coming together, this is Mar Chamer, this is Kailal, this is Maisif, this is... And all of a sudden we just have, we drop all of our difficulties and we say that there's an opinion like this. Rava Amar, Rava says, you removed the limb, and with the removing of that limb, you made it into a treifa. Like, for example, you removed the leg above the knee. So, Mar Savar, Behim B'chaya Levar Meinai Medes, that's said in a funny way, that it's not already divided up into Aver Menachais, and then Isser Aver, Visser Treifa B'hadi Adadi Ka'asu. They're coming at the same time, Aver Menachai and Treifa. How did it become Aver Menachai? Right now, only when you removed it. How did it become a treifa? Right now, only when you removed it. So Rabbi Yochanan holds that Bahadi Hadadi, it comes together. You have two prohibitions here. Mar Sabar, the other one holds Behim B'chaya Levarim Medes. It was already Aver Menachai beforehand. Even before you cut it up, it's a bunch of Evarim. And we're not going to have a treifa be imposed over Aver Menachai. So Reish Lakish says you only have one Malkus, only for Aver Menachai, which was beforehand. It was already, the prohibition of Aver Menachai was there even before you cut it up, even before you cut off this leg. Okay, what we did here, let's just take a look over here what we did. We had a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and we asked a contradiction and we gave an answer from Rabbi Yosef, and we gave an explanation for Rabbi Yosef's answer by Abaya, and we gave another answer from Rava. So everyone is explaining a Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish down here in Bavel, and it's being answered by Abaya and Rava, the explanation. Now we're going to go back to Rabbi Yochanan, and we're going to discuss a statement from Rabbi Yochanan that's given over by Reb Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Ami is going to come into play, and Rabbi Vo is going to prove. So it's all going to be in this in Israel. Reb Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Yochanan. We said Reb Chia bar Abba was the great student. He reviewed his learning every 30 days in front of Rabbi Yochanan. It was very exact. He says like this: Ochal chelev min achai, min atreifa, chayev shtayim. Okay, he does three prohibitions here. He eats the prohibited fat, the chelev. He removes it from a living animal. And by the way, the animal was a treifa. It would have died.
Why do we clear about the issue of a treifa? The issue of a treifa really only comes into play after the shechted.
Good, very good.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Huh? When an animal is walking around, for example, has a damaged lung, there's nothing wrong with that animal. It has a cheskos kashrus until you shecht it and find out that it has a damaged lung. But as long as it's walking around alive, it's a perfectly good animal to do whatever it needs to be done with it.
I would think it's a treifa. We just don't know it.
That may also be the case.
And sometimes you do know it. Sometimes you know that it's
gonna go.
walking around.
But the whole concept of treifa doesn't take place until you shecht it.
Because before that it's a high.
No, until you shecht it, it doesn't become a treifa for whatever it's worth. It doesn't. Until you shecht it, there's nothing wrong with the animal. Once you shecht it, then you realize, oh wait, I can't eat it. It was going to die. It had a problem with this sort of problem, that sort of.
Rashi mentioned that before in Rish Lakish's opinion. In the case where the Eiver Menachai is there, and it became a treifa afterwards. Rabbi Yochanan held Isser Chalal Isser. Rish Lakish says the treifa doesn't go onto the animal until it's shechted. So once you shecht it, then it's not an Eiver Menachai, and then you'll only have the Isser Treifa. But the Isser Treifa doesn't go on it yet. That's how Rashi explained it. And even when the animal's a treifa, it doesn't have a Isser Treifa until the Shechita. Rashi says that's what you're saying. Okay, so here we have three prohibitions, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Barabba says in Rabbi Yochanan that you only chayiv for two. The three are chaylev menachai, I guess it's considered basar menachai, and treifa. Amalei Rabami says, V'leima mar shalish. Why doesn't the master say three? Shani amar shalish. Because I heard from Rabbi Yochanan that it's three. You chayiv for all three. Itmar nami, we have a statement as well that Amar Rabavo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabavo said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ochal chaylev menachai mina treifa chayiv shalish. So it's machlekes here. Are you chayiv two or three? Rabavo versus Rabbi Barabba. Now, as we're going to explain this, there's a lot of options. Yeah, as you can imagine. Like which of the two that? Okay, but Ma'ika Miflagi, what's the machlekes? Kegoin shenitzer from Yitzias Ruba. It became treif right when it was born. That's the expression. Right when it was born, Yitzias Ruba, because when is it considered born? When the majority of the animal comes out. Manda Amar Shalish, the one that says three, which is Rabavo in Rabami, Kosavar Behima B'chayel Eivar Medes, that originally when it's born, it's always considered Eivar Menachai, even before you cut a limb off. The Isser Chaylev, Isser Eiver, Isser Treifa, Bahadi Adadikasi, all three happened at the same time. Chaylev was right when it's born. Why is Chaylev right when it's born? Because when it's in utero, we said that it's a ben pekua. It doesn't have the Isser Chaylev. If you shech the mother, you can eat the Chaylev. So it must be the Chaylev only comes when it's born. And it became a treifa also right when it was born. And it became Eiver Menachai also right when it was born. So all three came together. Umanda Mashtayim, the one that says only two, which is Rabbi Barabba, there's no Eiver Menachai until you take an Eiver Menachai. The animal is still, there's no Isser there on the animal of Eiver Menachai. The Isser Chaylev, Isser Treifa, Yika. So Chaylev and Treifa it has from when it was born. The Chaylev is there. However, Isser Eiver la Yasi Chayil, but the Isser Eiver won't be, he doesn't hold that because it's Yisur ben Nayach, so it's more Chomer and it's going to be able to have all three. If you want, you could say a little different. The Kuli Alma Behima B'chei Lav Levar Medes. No one holds that there's Eiver Menachai right when it's born. Eiver Menachai is only when it's removed. But my Yisser Eiver B'chei Yisser Chaylev Yisser Treifa Kamiflagi. The machlekes is if we can say Yisser Chalal Yisser by Yisser Chomer of Eiver Menachai. Visur ben Nayach. Mar Savar Asichayil, Mar Savar Asichayil. One says that it will be imposed, one says that it won't. If you want, the Kuli Alma Behim B'chayel Eivar Medes. Really, it's already considered like cut up, right when it's born. So there's Eivar Menachai right away. It's a bunch of Eivarim. Whoever became a treifa later. But my is a treifa mechel is Eivar Kamiflagi. And will the halacha of treifa be imposed over Ever Menachai. Mar Savrasi Chayil. One says that it will be imposed, and we're going to need to prove this. But basically, he's going to hold Isser Chalal Isser. The reason why it's going to be imposed is because Midi Dahavi Achelev. Just like we say by Chelev, the pasuk says, "Chelev nevela utrefa leisechelu." The fat of a nevela and a trefa you can't eat. Now, why does the pasuk have to say that? We already, if it's chelev you can't eat it. If it's nevela you can't eat it. If it's trefa you can't. Nothing to do with. So the Amar Mar HaTorah Amra, the master said that the Torah says Yava Yisr nevela yachal isser chelev, Yava Yisr trefa yachal isser chelev. Because what the Torah is doing there is it's telling me that there's two prohibitions. There's the isser of nevela on the chelev, and there's isser trefa on. There's isser nevela and there's isser chelev. Both of them together. So therefore, we're going to say over here as well that we're going to have isser trefa together with Ever Menachai. Just like we did by chelev, that we said trefa could be imposed on chelev. So we're going to say that trefa could be imposed over Ever Menachai. And the whole animal is Ever Menachai while it's alive. Every limb is considered Ever Menachai according to this. V'idach. The other one says, we're not going to do that. Because a chelev hu de chayil. That was only the chayil, it's supposed to be. On chelev, the isser trefa can be imposed. Because chelev has a special leniency that it only applies to an animal, it doesn't apply to a wild animal. And that leniency allows for trefa, has more stringencies because the trefa applies to wild animals as well. It's not limited to a domestic animal like chelev is. So trefa could be imposed over chelev, but abel aver but by Ever Menachai we don't have that leniency that it doesn't apply to a wild animal. So therefore, trefa won't be imposed over it. So he's going to differentiate. But the fact is, we don't know that you can do that, and you're trying to make a comparison. Happens to be there is a slight difference in between these two laws, and you can't make that comparison. Okay, Kiyasa Ravdimi. They could have made it so much harder. They could have gone through.
Oh,
they only took like two possibilities there. They could have gone through that there's no Isser Chelev, there's no Isser Trefa, there's no. Okay. I can imagine trying to work out like the schedule on the train tracks, like which train should go where. That sort of organization. You have all these options, and they have to make everything fit.
The air traffic.
The air traffic, yes. Okay. Kiyasar Ravdimi. When Ravdimi came, Amar, he said, Ravdimi was a traveler. We're going to have a few travelers here. Ravdimi is a traveler, and Ravin is a traveler. Ula was a traveler. They would bring halachos back and forth. Ula we're not going to have here, but we're going to have Ravdimi and Ravin. And they're bringing a discussion from Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Ravdimi came, he said, Boi minei Reb Shimon ben Lakish me Rabbi Yochanan. Reb Shimon ben Lakish asked from Rabbi Yochanan, was his brother-in-law in Chavrusa. Chalka mi bachutz mahu. Normally, Torah gives us a certain amount of time to eat something, and that time, if it's within that amount of time, it's considered like you ate that amount. Kazayas of matzah or whatever. Or the same with forbidden things. You have a certain amount of time. If you ate that chelev in this kedei achilas pras, the whole kazayas, so that's considered like the prohibition. The problem is that when it comes to Ever Menachai, you're not really eating edible things. Now, before we were learning that you can combine the bone together with the basar to create a kazayas. Even though you're only eating the basar, so it's only kazayas of edible food. I don't think you're eating the bone. I don't think that's what the Gemara means. I think you're eating the basar off this bone, and you're already chayiv just for that.
What, you're eating it raw?
No, whatever it is, raw, cooked, whatever it is. But the idea here is that the kazayas that you need for Aver Menachai is you can use the bone as well, which is not really edible. So we have a chiddush here. He's asking, Chalka mibachutz. Before you eat it, you divide it into two pieces. And you eat one, and then you eat the other one, within the shear. But because this is a special type of halacha, of eating a kazayas, where you don't need really a kazayas of the basar, do we say that you can divide it up and eat it in two separate times, and that's also going to count? I mean, we do that always, you can divide it up. But here may be different, because this may be a special halacha that you have to eat the whole aver, even if it's not a kazayas of basar. So Amalei pater. Rabbi Yechon says you're pater. If you don't eat the whole thing in one go, you're pater. Bifnim mai. Let's say you put it into your mouth, but you divide it in your mouth and you swallow it in two separate swallows. Amalei chayiv. He says then you're going to be chayiv. Kiyasa Ravin. When Ravin came, he's the other traveler. I guess he came after. Amar chalka mi b'chutz is pater. Mi bifnim. However, if you divide it in your mouth, not divide it outside your mouth, you divide it in your mouth. That's a machlekes Rabbi Yechanan Amar Chayev from Shimon Lak Shamar Pater. Rabbi Yechanan says that you're Chayev, like we said before, like Rav Dimi said correctly, and Reish Lakish says Pater. That we didn't hear before from Rav Dimi. Rabbi Yechanan Amar Chayev. Rabbi Yechanan says that you're Chayev because look, Harinena Greini B'Kazayas. See, the pleasure of the stomach is from being full. The pleasure of the throat is from swallowing. So if you swallow more, that combines to the amount of pleasure. Rabbi Yechanan says Yechayev because you swallowed a kazayas. Now, it was in two stages, but the amount, the size of it as it's going down is not the big deal. It's maybe it's the flavors. I don't know. Reish Lakish Amar Pater. Reish Lakish says you're exempt. Achila b'meyav binan v'leka. When it goes into your stomach, if you divide it up, you don't have the same fullness. I don't know if that's. You can say exactly the opposite also, but right. You say, look, it's in his stomach. He's full now. You can say it like that. Anyway, that's what Reish Lakish says. And we're going to see later. The Gemara is going to possibly switch it anyway. The Elul Rab Shimon ben Lakish Heichem Mishkachas La de Machayev.
Right.
How are you going to have
Just to swallow it whole.
a whole kazayas and swallow it whole? Amar Rav Kana begrumisa ze'erta. We're talking about a small bone that's on the thigh, right above the femur. It says.